Welcome into the live desk on this Monday morning. I'm Janae Hancock, joined by traffic anchor Taylor Johnson. Taylor, how's it going?
It's going well. I can't complain. It's
Yeah.
Monday after a
It is.
holiday weekend. Did you do anything fun?
I chilled by the pool yesterday. Pretty relaxing weekend for me. But I know you traveled for the holiday weekend.
I did. I drove down 29 to Omaha, and
Yeah.
it actually wasn't a bad drive.
That's good.
Going there or coming back.
Yeah.
Other places might not have been so lucky, but it is such an easy drive. I
Yeah.
actually talked to my grandmother the whole time.
Oh, I love that.
We talked for like 3 hours.
We love a close relationship with the grandmother. That is amazing. But as you said, you had beautiful weather driving to your location, your destination, but so many other people who were traveling for the holiday weekend, they did not experience the same type of weather. So we're going to have a weather update here in a bit from meteorologist Stevie Stevenson, but we do want to talk about some stories that we are following from the holiday weekend. Starting off with this video you see right here on your screen, we are continuing to follow devastating news out of Texas over the weekend. At least 82 people have died and dozens are still missing after floods hit central Texas on the 4th of July. Camp Mystic, all girls summer camp that sits along the Guadalupe River, have confirmed that 27 campers and counselors have died in the weekend floods. You can just see, just the devastation right here on your screen. The river at the camp rose more than 20 feet in less than 2 hours during the peak of the flooding early on Friday morning. And we're actually hearing from one of the campers that didn't actually attend Camp Mystic, I should say, but they were not too far away from this area. I do want to take a listen in to what he had to say.
I wake up in the morning around 4 a.m. maybe, and I just hear screaming coming out from outside. And then eventually later on, I find out that someone's cabin had flooded and they all went outside. People came into our cabin because their cabin had flooded. These are the same people I was talking about that were screaming outside. And I just remember, so behind our cabin, there was a back road. There was like a little road behind there. And I saw like at least 60 people walking on it, and it was just crazy.
Taylor, just really think about that. These are children. So many others are still missing as far as adults are concerned as well. But these are children that woke up to screaming and woke up to floodwaters. Just terrifying out of Texas.
Yeah, and I can only imagine also how the parents feel. You send your kids to camp to have a good time, and never would you think that something like this would happen. Even the counselors, being there to support the kids and them being a part of the victim count as well. It's just been so hard to watch that video.
Yeah, definitely. And, we're hearing from people who have dropped their kids off at that same camp or camps around it. And that is such a huge part of the Texas culture, especially during the summertime, for your kids to go to summer camps like that one. So just sending our best and our prayers to everyone that has been impacted, or just everyone in Texas in general. So with that being said, rescuers are still searching for at least 41 missing this morning. I do want to take a look at some more video that we're getting from Texas to take a look at that devastation, giving you a different perspective. This is drone footage coming in from central Texas over the weekend. And guess what? The floods are actually making an impact here locally as well. I want to turn to Instagram, where you can see this statement coming in from the Hunt family as they are mourning a horrific loss as well. Tavia Hunt, the wife of Chief CEO Clark Hunt, confirmed that one of their young family members has died in those floods. And she goes on to say that our hearts are broken by the devastation from the floods and the tragic loss of so many lives, including a precious little Hunt cousin, along with several friends' little girls. Just absolutely heartbreaking. When I saw this news hit yesterday, as well as hearing from so many others that found out that their loved ones unfortunately passed away, it just breaks your heart, and it gives you chills as well. Something that also gave me chills, Taylor, I want to take a look at this tweet coming in from the NFL, their account on the social media platform X. They said that the National Football League's two Texas-based teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans, are uniting with the NFL Foundation to support the victims' families and survivors of the heartbreaking floods in central Texas. They go on to say that together they will contribute contribute $1.5 million to provide both immediate assistance and long-term resources to those most impacted by the catastrophic flooding. So we just love to see that, and I know so many others. I know Baylor University is also making a statement, and I know that there are some other celebrities who are also giving to the state of Texas, whether they're from there or not, Taylor.
Yeah, it's always so important to see those figures, those people that residents in their state love so much, like sports teams and celebrities, like you mentioned, to really just like step up to the plate and show their commitment to the community as well by donating their time, their resources. It's just unfortunate that it has to be for something like this, you know, where the people who are impacted are facing devastation rather than it being something more positive. But it's always good to see the way that folks are giving what they can, and that also just goes into our local community as well, going across state lines to help. So many of you know Operation Barbecue Relief, and they've assisted in several communities from natural disasters, and they are doing it once again. Co-founder Stan Hayes, he's setting up a food service line in the community of Kerrville. He says that it can be challenging speaking with those people in those hard moments, but he does hope to offer some hope to them.
It's one of those things that it helps them realize they're not forgotten, you know, on a holiday weekend because, you know, there was something else going on. It reminds them that, hey, there's still, you know, there's still good in the world, and there's good people that want to help.
And if you want to donate or help out by volunteering, you can find more information on Operation Barbecue Relief's website. And I know that there are a lot of people who dedicate their lives just to philanthropic work and being able to, at a moment's notice, get up and travel to wherever they need to travel to in the country to make sure that people have food, that they have shelter, water, other resources. So I really commend the people who are dedicated to that philanthropic work.
Yeah, and I'll give it to Operation Barbecue Relief as well. You know, when there are such tragedies like what happened in Texas over the weekend, they jump up, they don't think about it, they just go for it. And they're always looking for volunteers, and the volunteers that raise their hand and they help and they travel to go help those in need. It makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
I mean, just standing by and handing out food to whether it's first responders or people who lost their homes or lost their loved ones, I know it just means a lot to those in that community that have been impacted. Again, if you were just now joining us, we do know that at least 41 people are still missing this morning, but at least 82 people have died and dozens are still missing, as we've already touched on, as far as those floodings that the flooding that happened in Texas over the weekend. So we are going to continue to follow this story, and we will have an update coming in from Stevie Stevenson, who is a meteorologist here at the station. But right now I do want to take a look at that video once again, Taylor. Just all of these crews that are truly coming together to help those in need right now.
And the first responders really want to just give our thoughts and prayers out to them as well, because I can't even imagine the scenes that they're coming upon, you know, finding some of those folks who are missing and maybe having to go to the families and break the news to them that their loved one was found. I'm sure it takes a toll on their emotions, on their mental health, as they're out there just doing their job of trying to serve the community in their own way.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on something that I heard early this morning as we continue to hear from people who have been impacted in the area. I mean, there is a couple that they woke up to the rain and then they woke up to the flood, unfortunately. And by the time they were able to get their shoes on, their car was already moving down the block, and then they were right at the ceiling of their home, grabbing onto their instruments because the husband is actually a musician, and the wife, just a day later, she showed up for a double shift at work. So despite going through all that, I mean, it just talks about just being determined, and then also just not letting what has happened to their home, what has happened to them, interfere with their lives. So it's just a testimony that they all have in Texas right now.
Yes.
And really the heart of Texas, if we're talking about it.
Yeah, resiliency is a big part of it. And, you know, it's hard to wrap your head around something like this happening, especially something that's out of your control. So like the anecdote that you just shared, I think some people try to focus on the things that they can control in the moment, you know, as they try to move past what has happened. And, you know, with flash flooding too, it doesn't take long. It's there and then it's gone. And it's just like, you know, what even happened here? There's not much time to even process or react to it.
And you know what, Taylor, I think we are joined now by meteorologist Stevie Stevenson. So we're going to pull her in to have a quick conversation just to get a meteorologist's perspective about what we're seeing right here on our screen. I mean, Stevie, touching on the latest, we know that at least 82 people have died and dozens are still missing this morning after those floods hit central Texas on the 4th of July. Just devastating news and devastating videos and photos that are coming out of Texas right now. Stevie, just how much rain actually fell in central Texas? Do we have those numbers as of this morning?
We do, yes. So if we go back over the whole weekend as a whole in that link to Janae, we can look back at the past 72 hours. So first of all, what I do want to start off with was it wasn't only how much rain fell over the entire weekend, but the rate at which that rain fell. Initially, on the morning of July 4th, in Texas Hill Country, there was reports of rain showers and storms dropping 3 inches every single hour. So that's a rain rate that we don't even really see here with our heaviest of storms. So that's why that was so unprecedented, and also why everything happened so quickly on the morning of July 4th. Also keep in mind, this was before the sun even rose. So many people were probably sleeping. I'm assuming it was even prior to 4:30 in the morning. So that's a very important note too, was the time of day that this all started at, and something that is crucial to the story here. So also, first, where that moisture was coming from in the first place, it's the Atlantic hurricane season right now. There was Tropical Storm Barry that made landfall on the eastern coast of Mexico just days prior. So there were a ton of remnants left over from Barry that we were then able to put to work in the form of all of those rain chances in general. So I do want to pull up rain observations from that morning.
That's what we're taking a look at right now on our screens.
Correct, yes. So what we're going to do is set the time backwards to 1 a.m. on the morning of July 4th. And then we'll take that up until now, because rain is still falling, and that's something that I will cover here coming up shortly. So let's take things over to the Texas Hill Country. Some of these reports are not vetted just yet, but we can start to see, starting in that morning, how much rain was falling. So let's take just a look around the area as a whole. First, we can see just...
Oh, wow.
Yes, exactly. Just to the northwest of Austin. That is where a lot of rain continues to fall. But the big story lately has been out of Kerr County. That is farther to the south and closer to northwest of San Antonio. So we can start to see here already, some of these readings are exorbitant. They're not fully fine-tuned just yet, but they can start to give us an idea of how much rain did fall in the middle of the weekend and the holiday weekend in general.
What is the largest amount of rainfall that you are seeing in this area?
So far, the approved reports that have come out from this weekend are about 10 to 13 inches. Those are the approved reports, the ones that have already been vetted. We're going to continue to get even more reports and fine-tune those.
Right.
The National Weather Service will as well. And that's going to be something that will further help us understand exactly what happened this weekend. But official reporting in the areas that saw the most flooding came out to be about 10 to 12 inches in more isolated spots, but that piles up. There's a statistic that came out of Kerr County that stated the amount of rain that fell that morning on July 4th was estimated to be 100 billion gallons of water. That's more rain, or rather more water, that gets moved by the Niagara Falls.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
Yes.
I heard that this morning as well. And I mean, I mean, taking that in, let's talk about the preparation. If that is what's coming down in the Texas area, what does the preparation really look like? I mean, could people really have prepared for this?
Good question. It's a 1 in 1,000 year flood. So any given year has a 0.1% chance of having an event like this happen. So that's how statistically low an event of this magnitude is likely to be on any given year. So this year fell in that 0.1%. But also, the National Weather Service was putting out flood advisories and watches ahead of this event, as some of the longer range models were starting to tap into finding that so much rain was capable of falling. And it really came at this triple point area where we were already seeing a lot of heavy thunderstorms that the Texas Hill Country can get this time of year. That's natural for them. They get tons of rain at one time and then a lot of time where they don't get a drop of rain. So that also feeds into how the environment can't take that amount of rain. The soils there very shallow, not good at absorbing. So when you just saturate those soils and overwhelm them, they can't soak things up, so then water piles on top of it. That's where we start to see that issue. Also, Texas Hill Country, if you haven't been, there's a lot of terrain. Hill is in the name of Texas Hill Country, so we have all these terrain issues as well, with shallow soil draped all across it, meaning that we're going to start to see that rain being funneled into areas like creeks and rivers that can cause the flash flooding too. So the preparation for that can't come from the environment. The environment already can't take it. There's infrastructure that can be put in place, and that is put in place to try and help and mitigate for issues like this, because the Texas Hill Country is called Flash Flood Alley, much like we're in the middle of Tornado Alley. That's their environmental concern that they deal with a lot.
But still, Stevie, you know what I'm hearing from people as well. I mean, as more reaction continues to pour in, it's just the fact that even though it's called that, they still have never experienced anything like what they're seeing and what they saw over the weekend. So it is just devastating. And I know you said a lot still needs to be confirmed, but taking a look at just the numbers that was just on our screen and then comparing it to Niagara Falls, I mean, it's just amazing. It is just completely heartbreaking. But I am going to cut into this really fast because I know Texas officials are actually giving an update right now on the Texas flooding as the death toll continues to rise. Let's take a listen in.
And what could have been done differently to prevent this loss of life? And that's a natural process. I think it should not happen in a bitter and partisan sense, but it should happen in a reasonable sense of saying, what lessons can we learn? And I will give an example. You know, Houston's my hometown. If you live on the Gulf Coast, we get hurricanes. That's part of living on the Gulf Coast as hurricanes hit. And I do think Texas as a whole has learned over time how to deal more effectively with hurricanes. And so you look here, we know the National Weather Service put out an emergency warning just after 1 a.m. and a second emergency warning just after 4 a.m. Now, obviously, most people at 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. are asleep. And so I think we will have a reasonable conversation about, are there any ways to have earlier detection? And some of that, the limits of a flash flood, they're very difficult because they can arise so quickly. But everyone would agree in hindsight, if we could go back and do it again, we would evacuate particularly those in the most vulnerable areas, the young children in the cabins closest to the water. We would remove them and get them to higher ground if we could go back and do it again. Obviously, everyone would. The people in RVs by the river's edge. We know in disasters like this, RVs and mobile homes are particularly susceptible, whether a flood or a hurricane or a tornado, they're particularly susceptible to that. And so my hope is, in time, we will learn some lessons to implement to next time, and there will be another flood, there will be another disaster. But next time there's a flood, I hope we have in place processes to remove especially the most vulnerable from harm's way. But I think that's going to be a process that will take a careful examination of what happened and how can we how can we implement processes better in the future to prevent this same loss of life?
Senator, there were claims that the National Weather Service sent that first flash flood warning that should have alerted phones at 1:14 in the morning. Well, we have a federal public database maintained by PBS Warn, that says the first emergency alert wirelessly here in this area to Kerr County was not until after 9 a.m. That was more than 4 hours after the severe flooding had come to this area. Did you know that? Have you seen that? And what's your response, knowing the state and cuts to the NWS in recent months by this administration?
So I don't know the source for what you're saying. All of the public reporting I've seen is that there were 2 alerts that went out, one just after 1 a.m., one after 4 a.m. You know, I can tell you, I talked about the partisan finger pointing. I think there have been some eager to point at the National Weather Service and say cuts there led to a lack of warning. I think that's contradicted by the facts. And if you look at the facts in particular, number one, that these warnings went out hours before the flood became a true emergency level. But number two, the National Weather Service here, New Braunfels is where they were headquartered. They had additional manpower. In fact, they had 3 additional people working that night, anticipating that it was going to be a very dangerous weather situation. I also think it's worth noting that the National Weather Service Union, which has been very critical of the DOGE cuts, has publicly said that they don't believe that the reduction in staffing had any impact whatsoever on their ability to warn of this event. And so, look, I think it is reasonable over time to engage in a retrospective and say at every level what could have been done better, because all of us would want to prevent this horrific loss of life. But I think just immediately trying to use it for either side to attack their political opponents, I think that's cynical and not the right approach, particularly at a time when we're dealing with a crisis and we're dealing with grief.
But does this make you question whether there should be cuts at the National Weather Service and FEMA? I know you've been supportive of FEMA.
Look, I am very supportive of FEMA. I'm very supportive of the National Weather Service. They both perform essential roles, and I think it is critical at every federal agency, particularly when you're dealing with public safety, that we make sure that critical roles are maintained. That's a longer and broader discussion, but as I said, everything from the public evidence indicates that was not a contributing factor to what occurred here.
Is it possible to get Dalton in just to talk about that and what the National Weather Service alerts? Because there were escalating forecasts throughout the day from the National Weather Service. What did the emergency managers of the county and other local officials do with that information starting at 1:15 and onward, where you have the dire river forecast at 6:30? Were emergency managers doing anything to put any processes in place to warn people on the river?
So overall, we were preparing for the July 4th, weekend. So we had National EMR on site. We were, basically stood up kind of a incident command post, if you will, to prepare for that event. So everybody was kind of up looking at weather. We looked at the weather before. When you looked at the National Weather Service, flood map, it spanned all the way from the west side of Texas, with Kerr County kind of being in that upper northeast corner of it. And so everybody, including the National Weather Service, was looking at where's the rain going to hit. We know it's somewhere in here, but with rain, especially when you're dealing with terrain, you got to figure out. Sometimes you don't know until it falls. So once it starts falling, then you got to figure out, okay, how's the watershed going to do this? How's the science going to work? And when you have that north and south fork that we had talked about before, it all converged into one. We do know that a lot of the camps were looking at this just as much as as everybody was. With the rainfall percentages, even the National Weather Service had looked at, and don't quote me on the numbers, but it's anywhere between 1 to 7 inches. We got significantly over that. And again, when it goes into very congregated areas and how that watershed shifts into the rivers, that impacts things. And so the camps, obviously, we've heard stories where campers were getting up. They were up at 3:30 in the morning. They were trying to move to higher ground. And the other interesting part of the terrain, and we've talked to UGRA folks as well. This is the headwaters of the Guadalupe. This is the beginning. This is where everything forms when it comes into the North and South Fork. And so as those things develop, it develops very rapidly, very quickly, and this rose very quickly in a very short amount of time. And so those campers that were able to do that, it worked. There's been the other question, and I'll just give this one out. Evacuations. Well, why don't we evacuate? Well, evacuation is a delicate balance, because if you evacuate too late, you then risk putting buses, or cars or vehicles or campers on roads into low water areas trying to get them out, which then can make it even more challenging, because these flash floods happen very quickly. That's what.
And so we saw that in 1987, but was there any discussion about evacuating earlier, but when it wasn't too late? Was there any discussion about that among the officials?
Repeat your question.
Was there any discussion to evacuate or activate any emergency plans before it was too late, where it would be very dangerous like that?
Well, so again, just like disasters in Texas everywhere, it's very tough to make those calls, because what we also don't want to do is cry wolf. We don't want to make sure that we activate it at the right time. It is very difficult, very challenging, especially with this. We're looking at 100 kilometers, right? That's a big straight line distance. That's not even along the river. These areas take a lot of time to get out to. So even when first responders were on the ground at 3:30 in the morning, and we had reports, we had first responders that were getting swept away, actually responding to the first areas of rainfall. That's how quick it happened. First responders who have experience, who are Swiftwater qualified, were driving to as soon as the rain started falling, were driving to these areas, and one of them got swept off the road.
So what had been done?
One last question, everybody. One last question. Between 1 and 4 a.m. from local law enforcement to the camp, saying, I know you can't get buses in an hour, but was there anyone telling the camp between 1 and 4 a.m. you need to get the girls to higher ground at the very least, even if they have to walk up there in the rain, as many of them actually ended up doing? Was there any communication from local law enforcement to anyone at that camp between 1 and 4 a.m.?
That I don't know off the top of my head. What I do know, though, is there's 55,000 people in Kirk County. Kirk County is a massive, massive area. From here to those camps is 45 minutes on a good day. And so, obviously one of the big challenges that we have, even when you have cell service, a lot of those areas don't even have cell service. Radio communications towers, radio towers within the hill country becomes very challenging. So there's a lot of areas, especially when weather comes in, where cellular towers are down or you already have bad service. So there's a lot of factors that play and a lot of variables in there on communication that, again, I think as we work through this process, we know everybody has a lot of questions regarding what are the next steps and what's next. And I think all of these things, these are all great questions. And as we continue search and rescue and as we continue to move to the next step, we definitely want to dive in and look at all of those things, from cell service tower to radio communications, or emergency alerting. Any of those things, I think we all really need to take a look at and review. We can get the search and rescue and stuff complete.
In regards to the total number, before I say anything else, I just want to say thank you to you, all the first responders, everyone involved. We've been praying.
Thank you.
We've been praying. The media's been praying. Thank you guys for doing that. I've got two questions. One for you. Try to get an accurate count on number of missing. I know you can't. I know we don't know we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
But do we know a rough idea on total estimates that are still missing overall throughout the county? And then one other follow-up, this may be for Senator Cruz. A lot of speculation is being made about this being somehow man-involved with the weather modification, with some of the rainmaker technology, working with farmland. Do you think any of that, is there going to be any investigations into that, or can you communicate anything on that?
Let me answer your first question. I'm definitely turning that second one over to him. So on the first question, with missing persons, so obviously we have the knowns, the can't miss it kids, which is the numbers coming down as the sheriff has stated, and then we have the unknowns. But we don't know what we don't know. We actually have a 5 hotline line. It fluctuates between 3 and 5, but we're working on it. We get calls 24 hours, 7 days a week. We haven't hit the weeks yet, but we're still taking in calls. We are collecting all that information. So we don't have a solid number that we're willing to talk about right now. We do know that it is a lot, because we also are getting a lot of fake calls. You're looking. This is a worldwide discussion, and we're dealing with scammers. Victims' families are being reached out to, saying that they have their kids pay me money. It's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. We're dealing with with mental health issues, where people are calling saying they have visions. All of these things we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and we're having to vet this information, and it becomes very taxing on our people. Again, this is an extremely heartbreaking. This is, if not the worst, one of the worst disasters in this region in a very, very long time, even beyond 1987. And so, but we're
Your best estimate, like dozens or hundreds, or just to give people an idea?
a lot. So, yeah, let me.
Yeah,
Not
there.
to get into the weeds on, people are asking lots of questions, and where should we start the investigation at?
To the best of my knowledge, there is zero evidence of anything related to anything like weather modification. And look, the internet can be a strange place. People can come up with all sorts of crazy theories. What I know is a reality is that a whole lot of Texans are grieving right now. I will tell you, I was visiting with one parent who was talking about online being harassed online because their information was public that they had a little girl who was missing at Mystic. And look, there are a lot of people who are messed up, and my call for everyone, there's a time to have political fights, there's a time to disagree. This is not that time. This is a time just to reach out, support each other, go volunteer at the Salvation Army, give them money, go volunteer at your church, you know what I did when this happened? Just go hug your kids. Because I got to tell you, I hugged my girls with tears in my eyes, because every one of us who's a parent, there but for the grace of God go I. And nothing will fill the void in these moms and dads' hearts, but they'll make it through it. And every one of us, we have an obligation to come through and help them make it through it. And look, Texas will come through, and let me say, Kirk County, the Hill Country is incredible. It is beautiful. And these summer camps, Camp Mystic is an incredible Texas institution. For a century, it has made a profound difference helping young girls become strong women in Texas and across the country. And so, for me at least, I'm praying for these camps. I'm praying for all the campers, everyone implicated, everyone impacted, and I hope we come together and stand as one doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Alrighty, you just heard from Texas officials giving us an update on the flooding damage from over the weekend, the 4th of July to be exact. I do want to touch on just if you missed the beginning half, 75 bodies have been recovered after flooding in Kirk County. Again, that's coming in from officials. They reported that as of 8:30 local time in Texas, which is Central Time. We do know that the death toll includes 48 adults and 27 children. Mm-hmm. Again, most of those children coming in from Camp Mystic, where we know the Hunt family, Clark Hunt, owner of the Chiefs, CEO of the Chiefs, we do know that their little cousin is one of the bodies that was recovered, unfortunately, from Central Texas Camp Mystic. So again, just devastating. It looks like that press conference is still going underway, but we're going to continue on with our local news here. I do want to touch on, Taylor, something that an official said during that press conference is that rescuers were actually driving through the area over the weekend in Texas, and they got swept off of the road. So I mean, it's not just people who live in the area, it's not just campers, but it's people who are also putting their lives at risk trying to help those in need. So just terribly sad.
Yes, he's talked about a lot that they've been having to deal with, a lot of the people who are working there and trying to help with the recovery and information. One of the things that he touched on that we talk about a lot when we have storms in our area is scammers and fake calls. And he was saying that there's been some calls that they've received where people will say that they have someone's child, pay me and I'll give you your child. You know, a family that lost a loved one, or it's always an opportune time for people to try to take advantage of these types of situations. So they did mention that they're doing everything that they can to try to prevent that from happening, and spreading the word once again to just be leery of these fake calls and these scammers who might be out here trying to take advantage of such a difficult situation. Also, what stood out to me, which we heard Ted Cruz say, was that Camp Mystic has a very long history in that community. And so it's just very devastating to know that they've been impacted in such a tragic way.
Yeah, and again, they also touched on the fact that they're dealing with people with who are calling in with mental health issues as well, saying that they're having visions. And it's just a lot that is being, I mean, there are people who are helping as far as missing their relatives, but then there are also people who just aren't helping at this time. And so officials are just trying to dig through everything in order to get the accurate information out there. And of course, here at KCTV 5, we will continue to follow this national story that really is impacting us here locally as well. We know people have loved ones in this area who have unfortunately lost their lives due to the flooding. We are going to continue on with local news stories in our area. If you happen to miss our morning show today, taking a look at this video, we are expected to learn more about Kansas's attempt to bring the Chiefs and the Royals across the state line. Kansas Senate President Ty Matterson called for a meeting today after the Chiefs asked for more time before making a decision. Now, currently, the state is offering to pay up to 70% of stadium costs, and Masterson says that he expects to extend the deadline. I know this is a talker in the community, so we will continue to keep you all posted on this as well. Of course, people are always going to be interested when it has to do with the Chiefs and the Royals. I mean, these are our home teams, so we have to keep you all posted on this as well, Taylor.
Yeah, it's been keeping people, including myself, on the edge of our seats, just trying to figure out, okay, what's going to happen? What is it going to look like? So we'll continue to for sure keep everyone updated on that. But speaking of talkers, here's another situation here in Jackson County, an update to the Frank White recall. So Jackson County, they could soon have a new county executive, but that decision is going to be up to you, the voters. So later this afternoon, Jackson County legislators, they're going to vote on an ordinance that would send the recall of Frank White to the polls. KCTV 5's Nathan Brennan, he joins us from the Jackson County Courthouse with more on this.
Hey, good morning, Kansas City. I'm Nathan Brennan right outside the Jackson County Courthouse. You might remember just last week, we first brought you the story that tens of thousands of signatures were collected in Jackson County to potentially recall County Executive Frank White. Now, ultimately, that decision will show up on your ballot within the next coming weeks, possibly coming months. But first, it has to be passed in an ordinance by Jackson County legislators. That's why they're going to meet here at the courthouse later this afternoon at 3 o'clock. They're going to be voting on that ordinance. Now, if it passes on your ballot next month, August 26th, you will vote whether or not to recall Frank White. Now, throwing a whole wrench in this entire thing, Frank White can veto today's ordinance. Now, there's still a question of whether that is actually going to be allowed. That's against the code of conduct. It's a conflict of interest. But again, later this afternoon, 3 o'clock, we will hear from Jackson County legislators. They will decide whether or not next month, August 26th, it will show up on your ballot to recall Jackson County Executive Frank White.
Again, that was KCTV 5's Nathan Brennan. We will continue to keep you all posted on that as well. We should have more information later on this evening. But again, like you said, Taylor, just a huge talker across the community as well. I do want to move along to a story. I mean, we talked about the holiday weekend at the top of this live stream, but continuing on, we do have some new details, some new numbers to bring you. A projected 72 million traveling Americans could make this the busiest 4th of July in 15 years. Millions of airline passengers actually made their way through security checkpoints yesterday, making it one of the busiest in TSA history. And despite that, travelers say things actually went smoothly and haven't been concerned about the crowds. Now, even with those record-breaking air travel numbers, most families drove instead of flying, including Taylor Johnson. An estimated 61 million people took advantage of the low gas prices. I probably should have been one of them. I always wait until the last minute to get gas. So I probably...
I'm one of those people too. It's okay.
Yes. So even though I didn't travel for the holiday weekend, I definitely should have taken advantage of those gas prices. And who's to say? I mean, they're not still going on. So have to hop on over to the gas station today.
Yeah.
So,
and as you were saying that this could make it the busiest 4th of July in 15 years, I was trying to think, like, what was I doing on the 4th of July 15 years ago? Like, I think I was still in high school.
No, that's a good question. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, hopefully everyone enjoyed their holiday. I know that it was really busy here locally. The fireworks are still popping in my neighborhood.
Are.
I'm like, listen.
Even before the 4th, it's just like the whole week. Just prepare yourself for the sonic booms. And
go ahead.
I was going to say, and with that being said, we do want to talk about safety when it comes to those fireworks that you want to pop off at home. So take a look at this video. So the city of Edgerton, Kansas, they posted this to social media saying that crews responded to a pile of used fireworks that were left smoldering on the side of the road. You can imagine what kind of devastation that could have caused if they were still ignited. The city tells us that this can happen if you don't properly soak used fireworks after you're done setting them off. So you want to be sure to follow some safety safety measures to properly dispose of your fireworks. And we do have some tips for that if you don't know how, or if you never fired fireworks off before and it's your first time. So if you still need to get rid of those fireworks that you set off, or if you want to set off more tonight, then here's what you need to know. Soak them in water. Firefighters, they do recommend soaking them in a bucket for about 24 hours. Then after that, you want to seal the wet fireworks in plastic bags or plastic wrap to stop them from drying, and then you can throw them in the trash. But never leave your fireworks out in the road or in the yard like you see right here. And that was a lot of fireworks if you look at that video, because if any of it is still hot, it could cause a fire. And especially in the grass, like if the grass is dry, it could turn into a whole situation. So keep that in mind.
I mean, it's terrifying, but I mean, those are good tips as well to have. I mean, if this is your first year and you still want to pop some fireworks this week, definitely keep those tips in mind. Or if you have some loved ones that don't want to do it, but they don't necessarily know how to store it or what to do after, definitely keep those tips in mind as well. Share those tips with them. Okay, so moving along and just kind of keeping up with the firework trend, I want you to take a look at this video right here on your screen. You can see a crowd who witnessed a fireworks show in Oak Grove is actually shaken after a major malfunction. Oak Grove actually streamed the whole show Thursday night, and towards the end of it, you can see a firework go straight into the crowd. You can see that right here on your screen. People could be seen yelling and running away from that area as an explosion actually happened. Thankfully, we haven't heard of any injuries so far. Oak Grove Parks and Rec say that they are talking to the experts that actually put on the show, and that an investigation into the cause of this malfunction is underway. So, I mean, even if you're not doing the fireworks, just be very vigilant of the fireworks that are around you and what you are watching, because, I mean, something like this can unfortunately happen. It has happened, and we're seeing it right here in our community.
Yes, thankfully nobody was hurt. You know, that could have really gone to the left there. Gosh, I can't even imagine